They're planning another wedding, a grand one. But they're already married? I asked. It's for the public, cameras, guests, everything. I whispered, then I'll be there. When I heard about the wedding, my heart was calm. No fear, only truth. I would walk in, look them in the eyes, and end it. That night, I looked in the mirror. White hair, tired eyes, steady face. The woman staring back was no longer Marina. She was truth itself. I'm alive, I whispered, and they will know it. Some people live playing roles. Others die trapped in them. Sophia had become the latter. The city buzzed with gossip about the grand wedding. They were the couple of the year. Magazines called them symbols of success and love, but I could see the lie behind every smile. Sophia smiled for the cameras, but offstage, she hid her face in her hands. I knew that tiny tremor in her lip. She had it whenever she lied as a child. Martha found out the wedding location, a grand villa outside the city. It was once my husband's dream home. Now it belonged to Emil. My heart cracked again. Martha asked, "Are you really going, Marina?" I answered, "I'm not just going, I'm returning." That night, I opened old boxes, photos, certificates, letters I once wrote to Sophia. Each letter carried a lesson. Always choose truth, even when it hurts. Now, her whole life was built on lies. I closed the box and looked into the mirror again. This time, I saw not myself, but my mission. The day before the wedding, Martha handed me an invitation. She had borrowed it from a wedding planner. "You can get in as a guest," she said. "Change your hair color, a little makeup, no one will recognize you." I smiled. I don't want to hide. I'll choose when to be seen. That night, I sat in a white dress. Every thread tied me to the past. "I'm not going to a wedding," I whispered. "I'm going to truth." The next morning, Sophia stared at her reflection. Emil asked, "Are you ready? Cameras arrive soon." She nodded, but her eyes were empty. She hadn't slept. Somewhere inside, she was waiting for me. The wedding day came. Music, laughter, cameras. Emil stood center stage, soaking in the applause. "Today," he said, "we celebrate love and a new beginning." That's when my voice cut through the room. "A new beginning? Built on lies, Emil?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward me. Sophia looked back and froze. I met her gaze. My daughter. I'm alive. Chaos erupted. Screams, gasps, flashing lights. Emil stepped back, color draining from his face. Sophia covered her mouth, sobbing. I approached her. "I forgive you," I said, "but the truth can't be buried." Sophia fell to her knees. Her tears weren't just tears, they were years pouring out. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't my victory. It was her awakening. The wedding was canceled. Newspapers called it the mother who returned from the dead. Emil fled. Sophia came to me the next day. She said quietly, "Mother, I lost myself." I answered, "No, my child, you just lost sight of the truth, but truth always finds its way back." She hugged me. For a moment, everything vanished. Pain, lies, years. Only a mother and daughter remained. Every headline read, "The living mother at the fake wedding." The city buzzed, but no one knew what was happening inside my heart. That evening, Sophia came home, her face pale, eyes swollen. She took my hands, trembling. "When I lost you, I lost myself," she said. I stroked her hair. Every gesture said, "I still love you." Then I told her, "My daughter, it's time to learn not to cry, but to live." "How, Mother? I've lied to everyone." "Yes, but truth will set you free. Live by it now." Hope flickered in her eyes for the first time. The next day, Emil went on television. He called me a mentally unstable woman. She faked her death for money, he said. I watched, anger burning in my chest, but I smundled. Now it's his turn to play, I thought. Martha looked at me. You must go to court, Marina. He didn't just take your life, he tried to erase your humanity. I nodded. This isn't just my story anymore. It's a fight for truth. The courtroom was full. Cameras, reporters. I entered in black, head held high. Emil, in his white suit, smirked. The judge asked, Mrs. Marina, what is your claim? I stood. I'm not defending myself, I said. I'm defending truth. This man, my son-in-law, declared me dead, forged certificates, and built his wealth from my disappearance. The judge reviewed the evidence. It was undeniable. Then Sophia stood up. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. I'm a witness, she said. I knew my mother wasn't dead, but I stayed silent because I was afraid. I was afraid of Emil. The courtroom went silent. Her tears hit the floor, and I felt pride swell in my chest. She had become the woman I had always hoped for, a woman who chose truth. The judge finally said, Emil Jason is guilty of fraud, forgery, and the unlawful erasure of identity. Someone applauded. I simply closed my eyes. I breathed. It wasn't just my victory, it was every mother's victory who had ever been silenced. Outside the courthouse, Sophia asked, What happens now, Mother? I looked at the sky. The sun broke through the clouds. Now we live, my daughter, every day in truth. And the past? The past is a lesson, and we've already learned it. I whispered to myself, I will never be silent again. I live for truth. That evening, we sat drinking tea. Sophia smiled. When I lost you, I lost myself, she said again. I answered, and now you've found yourself. You are strong. Martha, looking through the window, said, They thought you were defeated, Marina, but you came back. I smiled. I never left, Martha. I just went searching for the truth. The city was quiet, but in my heart, I heard music, the music of freedom. I looked in the mirror, and I didn't see a broken woman anymore. I saw a mother who had won. I live now, I whispered. I am Marina. I am the voice of truth. 3 months passed after the trial. Emil was sentenced. Sophia visited me every day, but a quiet ache still lived inside me. One day she asked, Mother, are you happy now? I paused. Happiness? It meant something different now. I am happy, I said, but not yet completely free. Why not? Because I haven't forgiven. Then, one morning, a letter arrived. It was from Emil. My hands trembled as I opened it. Mother, I didn't hate you. I just didn't know how to live with what I'd done. When I declared you dead, I killed myself too. Now, behind these bars, I hear your words. Truth hurts, Emil, but it sets you free. Forgive me, Mother. I don't deserve it, but don't forget me in your prayers. Tears filled my eyes, not of pain, but release. For days, I wrestled with myself. Forgive him. He destroyed you, my anger whispered. He looked at me like I was something he'd stepped in. My own son. The boy I raised with hands that still ache from scrubbing floors, from holding him through nights when the world felt too heavy. Mom, he said, his voice cold as winter, you're a burden. I can't keep doing this. You need to find somewhere else. There are words that slice cleaner than knives. That one did. I remember the sound that came after. Silence. Not the quiet kind, but the kind that hums in your bones, like the world just stopped breathing. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, his fine suit, the car keys in his hand, the way his eyes darted everywhere but me. He had his father's jawline, my smile, though I hadn't seen him use it in years. I see. I said, my voice trembling just enough to make me hate myself for it. He nodded, already done with the conversation. I'll help you pack tomorrow. I left before tomorrow came. I went back to that little house on Elm Street, the one he called worthless. The one with cracked paint, a porch that creaked like old bones, and a yard that refused to grow anything but stubborn dandelions. It was the house I bought when his father walked out, the house that held every meal I cooked from scraps, every tear I hid in the dark so my son wouldn't see. I sat on that porch till the sun came up, listening to the city wake. People rushing to jobs they hate, chasing dreams that never seem to come true. I thought of all the years I spent chasing mine. Not fame, not money, just peace. You know, peace ain't loud. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or miracles. It's quiet. It comes in moments, like the smell of coffee at dawn or a neighbor waving for no reason. That morning, I decided something. If my own son thought I was a burden, maybe I'd show him the weight of what he'd thrown away. The thing about people like me, Black women who've carried too much for too long, is that we know how to turn pain into purpose. We've had to. So I made my plan. I went down to the city clerk's office that same week, signed papers with shaking hands, transferred the title of that worthless house into his name. Didn't say a word to him, just mailed the deed and a short note that read, "You're right, son. This old house means nothing. I'm leaving it to you. Maybe you'll find more value in it than I ever did." I didn't wait for a reply. Instead, I packed a single suitcase, closed the front door one last time, and walked away. No grand goodbyes, no tears, just wind in my hair and a strange, hollow peace in my chest. I started over, moved to a small town by the coast, got a job at a diner. The people there didn't know my past, and I didn't offer it. Sometimes that's what healing looks like, not fixing what's broken, but walking away from it. Months went by. I'd wake up before dawn, pour coffee for strangers, listen to their stories. It's funny how you can vanish from your old life and still feel its shadow follow you everywhere. But I was free, or at least I thought I was. Then, one rainy afternoon, I got a call. A voice I hadn't heard in almost a year, shaking, softer than I remembered. "Mom?" I froze, coffee pot still in my hand. It's me," he said. I didn't know where else to call. There's a kind of silence that carries forgiveness in it. This wasn't that. This was the sound of guilt, heavy and real. "What is it, baby?" I asked, even though part of me wanted to hang up. He took a breath. It's the house. I didn't know what it meant to you. I went there, Mom, and I saw everything. The photos, the letters, the way you..." He stopped, like the words hurt to say. "I didn't know how much you gave up for me." I could hear the crack in his voice, the same crack I used to hear when he was little and afraid of thunderstorms. "Now you do," I said, softly. He started crying then, real crying, the kind that comes from your gut, the kind that sounds like regret. "You said it was worthless," he whispered, "but it's the only place that ever felt like home." I smiled through my own tears. "Some things," I said, "only show their worth when you lose them." He begged me to come back, to see me, but I wasn't ready, not yet, because forgiveness, like peace, doesn't come all at once. And sometimes walking away isn't punishment. It's the only way they'll learn what you were worth all along. When people see me now, standing tall, smiling easy, they think I've always been this strong. But strength isn't something you're born with. It's built, brick by brick, from everything life tries to take away from you. I was 21 when I found out I was pregnant with him. His father, Marcus, was the kind of man who could make you laugh even when your world was on fire. He had that spark, that street charm, the smile that made promises his hands couldn't keep. We met at a bus stop in Atlanta. I was on my way to my second job. He was just trying to stay warm. It started with coffee, turned into love, and ended like a bad dream. The night I told him I was pregnant, he went quiet. Didn't say much, just stared out the window. By morning, he was gone. That's how I learned what real silence sounds like. Not just the kind you hear, but the kind that settles in your chest. The kind that makes you stronger, whether you want it or not. I worked 2 jobs through that pregnancy. Day shifts cleaning offices where people didn't even look at me. Night shifts at a motel folding sheets that smelled like cheap perfume and loneliness. There were nights I came home so tired I couldn't even take off my shoes. I'd just collapse next to the window, rubbing my belly, whispering, "Hold on, baby, we're gonna make it. Mama's got you." And we did. Every struggle, every humiliation, I swallowed it down for him. I told myself it was all temporary, that one day he'd grow up, see how hard I fought, and maybe he'd bink me. Funny how we imagine our children's gratitude like a promise, but life don't work that way. He was a bright kid, sharp, curious, the kind of boy who'd take apart his toys just to see how they worked. I remember saving for months just to buy him his first secondhand computer. When he got that thing running, he looked at me like I'd given him the world. That smile, Lord, I'd have walked through fire just to see it again. I made sure he went to a good school, even if it meant skipping meals. When he got into college, I thought, this is it. This is where our story turns around. I sold that old Buick, worked extra shifts, did whatever I had to do. But college changed him. He came back home one summer wearing a fancy watch and a colder smile. He started talking different, like my way of speaking embarrassed him. He told me I should think bigger, act more refined. I remember laughing and saying, "Baby, big thinkin' don't pay light bills." He didn't laugh. It hurt watching him pull away, inch by inch. But I kept believing that love, real love, would bring him back. Years passed. He got a job in the city, stopped calling as much. When I'd visit, I'd feel out of place, like I was trespassing in his world. And yet, I still cooked for him, still cleaned up after him when he'd come home for the holidays, because that's what mothers do. We love even when it hurts. Then came that day, the one where he called me a burden. And suddenly, everything I'd carried, every silent sacrifice, every sleepless night, it all turned into one stark truth. He'd forgotten who I was. But here's the thing. You don't get to erase a mother's worth just because you've outgrown her hands. Those same hands built the life you're standing on. So when I left that house, I wasn't running away. I was teaching him something the world had failed to teach him. That you don't measure worth by what shines. Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones that look worn, tired, human. And maybe, just maybe, walking away was my loudest way of saying, I mattered too. The first night I slept in that little coastal town, I didn't dream at all. I guess my mind was too tired from remembering. The air smelled like salt and rain. The waves outside my window kept whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. But it was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't scare you, the kind that lets your heart catch its breath. I rented a room above a diner run by an older woman named Lila. White hair, wild laugh, didn't take nonsense from anyone. She reminded me of the kind of friend I used to pray for. On my first day there, she slid me a plate of pancakes bigger than my face and said, "You look like someone who forgot what sweetness tastes like." I laughed for the first time in months. It felt strange, like my body had forgotten how. I started working at that diner, mornings mostly, pouring coffee, wiping tables, learning people's names. There was something healing in serving others, in hearing strangers talk about their lives. You realize everybody's carrying something. And somehow, that makes your own pain feel a little smaller. Some nights, after closing, I'd walk down to the beach with my shoes in my hand. The ocean doesn't judge, it just listens. I'd talk to it like an old friend. "Tell me I did the right thing," I'd whisper. "Tell me walking away was love too." The waves never answered, but they always came back, and that was enough. One afternoon, a young man started coming into the diner. Always sat in the same booth by the window, always ordered the same thing: coffee, black, 2 sugars on the side. He'd bring a sketchbook with him, draw people when they weren't looking. One day, I asked him, "You drawing me too, baby?" He grinned, a little shy. "Only when you're not watching." I laughed. "You best make me look better than I do then." His name was Elijah, 25, an artist trying to make it. He reminded me of my son at that age, before life hardened him. We talked about dreams, about how hard it is to hold on to them when the world keeps pushing you down. He told me he'd been raised by his grandmother, said she used to tell him, "Don't chase success, chase peace." That line hit me deep. Peace. That was the thing I'd been chasing all my life, but never knew how to hold. Weeks turned into months. The diner started feeling like home. Lila would tease me, call me city girl, even though I'd never been much of one. And Elijah, well, he became like the son I wished I still had. Not because he replaced my boy, but because he reminded me that my heart still had room to care. One evening, after closing, we sat outside watching the sunset. He said, "You ever think about going back to where you came from?" I thought about it for a long time before answering. "I think about it," I said, "but every time I do, I remember how much it hurt to stay." He nodded like he understood. "Sometimes," he said, "you gotta leave the place that broke you to remember who you were before it did." That night, I cried. Not the heavy, hopeless tears from before. These were soft ones, the kind that wash something clean inside you. I realized then that I'd been waiting for someone else, my son, the world, anybody, to see my worth. But maybe worth ain't something you wait for. Maybe it's something you build quietly, one morning at a time, until it shines from inside you. I started writing again. Letters I'd never send. Stories from my past. The things I'd never said out loud. Lila found one of them once and told me, "Honey, these words could feel people. You should share them." I told her I wasn't ready, but maybe I was getting close. Because one morning, when I walked to work and saw the sunrise painting the ocean gold, I realized something simple. I was still here, still standing, still breathing. And for the first time in a long, long while, that was enough. It was late autumn when the past came knocking again. The wind had that kind of chill that seeps straight into your bones, the kind that carries old memories with it. I was wiping down tables after closing when the diner door swung open. At first, I thought it was just another lost traveler, but then I saw him. My son. He looked smaller than I remembered, not in size, but in spirit. His shoulders, once proud and stiff, had folded inward. His eyes, my eyes, carried the weight of something heavy. "Mom," he said softly, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. It had been nearly 2 years since I'd heard his voice in person. I'd imagined this moment so many times, what I'd say, what he'd say, how it might feel. But standing there, I felt nothing but the sound of my own heart beating against a chest that had already healed too many cracks. Lila froze behind the counter, then quietly disappeared to the back room. She knew this was something that didn't need witnesses. I didn't rush to him, didn't cry. I just stared, waiting to see who he was now, my boy or the man who once called me a burden. He took a step closer, hands trembling. "I didn't know where else to go," he whispered. I lost everything, Mom." His voice cracked on the word everything. I wanted to reach for him, to hold him like when he was little, when a scraped knee was the worst thing in the world. but I stayed still. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. He let out a long, shaky breath. "The company went under. I was laid off. The apartment? Gone. The car, too. I tried to keep it together, but He looked down, shame written all over him. "I thought I was better than you, Mom. I thought success would make me whole. But I was wrong." He looked up at me, eyes red. "I went back to the house, the one you left me. I tried to fix it. The roof caved in, the walls cracked. And then I found your old letters." My breath caught. "The ones you wrote but never sent. To me, to Dad, to yourself." He swallowed hard. "You wrote about how lonely you were, how hard it was to raise me, how proud you were anyway. I sat there, reading your pain, realizing I'd turned into the very thing that broke you." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I needed to see you, to say I'm sorry." For a long while, I said nothing. Silence can hurt more than words, but it can also heal. Finally, I walked over to the window, looking out at the ocean. "It took me a long time to forgive myself," I said quietly, "for staying too long and hurt, for loving people who forgot how to love back. And when I finally did, I found peace." I turned back to him. "You can't take that peace from me, but I can share a piece of it with you, if you're ready to carry it." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I am, Mom. I am." So I stepped closer, placed my hand on his cheek, the same way I did when he was a boy afraid of thunder. "You lost things, baby, but maybe losing them was the only way you'd remember what really matters." He broke then, fell into my arms like time had folded back on itself. And for the first time in years, I held my son, not the man who'd hurt me, but the child I'd never stopped praying for. We stood like that for a long time, both of us crying, both of us silent. The rain started outside, soft and steady, like the world itself was finally exhaling. Later that night, we sat in my small apartment above the diner, drinking coffee that had gone cold. He told me everything, the mistakes, the pride, the loneliness. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't a word. It's a quiet act of staying. When he left that night, he hugged me again. This time, I felt no weight between us. Only love. Fragile, but real. After he walked out, I looked at the photograph on my dresser, the one of him as a boy, gap-toothed and smiling, holding my hand. And I realized something I'd never truly understood before. We raise our children to grow away from us, but sometimes they have to fall to find their way back. The house he once called worthless had given him more than shelter. It had given him truth. And the mother he once called a burden, she'd become the proof that worth can't be measured in wealth or walls. It lives in love, and love always finds its way home. He started visiting on weekends. At first, it was awkward, two people learning how to breathe in the same air again. He'd knock softly on my door, holding a bag of groceries, or sometimes just flowers from the roadside. He didn't know what to say, and I didn't know where to start. So we began with small things: coffee, conversations about weather, the diner, the town. It wasn't much, but it was something. One morning he said, "Mom, I want to fix the house, the old one." I looked up from my cup and studied his face. There was purpose in his eyes, not pride this time, but peace. "I want to make it right," he said, "not just the roof or the walls, everything I broke." I didn't answer right away. Part of me was afraid to hope, but I nodded slowly. "Then we'll fix it together." So that's what we did. Every weekend, we'd drive back to Elm Street, to the place where everything began and fell apart. The old house looked worse than I remembered. Windows cracked, weeds tall as shame. But beneath the ruin, it still felt like home. We started small. He patched the roof while I painted the porch. We laughed sometimes, real laughter, not the kind you force to fill silence. He'd tease me for humming gospel songs off-key, and I'd tell him, "Boy, don't act like you didn't grow up to this voice." Sometimes we'd stop working and just sit, watching the sun drop behind the trees. He'd ask questions about things he'd never thought to ask before. "Mom, why didn't you ever leave the city when things got hard?" I smiled. "Because I was waiting for you to find your way home." There were still moments that hurt, quiet pauses when memories pressed too hard, but every time I looked at him, hammer in hand, sweat on his brow, I saw the boy I used to carry, not the man who had broken my heart. Little by little, the house came back to life. Fresh paint, new floors, curtains that smelled of salt and sunlight. It wasn't perfect, but neither were we. And maybe that's what made it beautiful. One Sunday evening, as we packed up to leave, he turned to me and said, "Mom, I think I understand now. You never wanted money or success or a fancy life. You just wanted peace." I nodded. "Peace, baby. That's all any of us really want, and it costs more than people think." He took my hand then, really took it, and squeezed it gently. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said. I smiled. "Oh, I did give up, on who you used to be, but I never stopped believing in the man you could become." He looked at the house one last time before we drove away, and I swear, for the first time in years, he looked free. A year passed. The seasons rolled through that little town like quiet miracles: spring rain, summer light, the golden hush of autumn. And through it all, that old house stood tall again, alive, breathing with new stories. Sometimes I'd sit on the porch alone, coffee in hand, and just listen. The wind in the trees, the hum of cicadas, the sound of forgiveness settling deep into the walls. You can almost hear peace if you sit still long enough. One afternoon, my son came by, not with guilt, not with apologies, but with a smile. He had a woman with him this time, and a little boy who looked just like him at that age. They ran around the porch, laughter spilling into the yard like sunlight through cracked blinds. He called out, "Mom, look who wanted to meet Grandma." And that word, Grandma, hit me harder than anything ever had. Not because of age, but because it meant a new start, a continuation of love that refused to die. I knelt down and held that little boy close. He smelled like soap and summer. His small fingers brushed the lines on my face like he was trying to read my whole life through touch. And maybe, in some way, he did. My son leaned on the porch rail beside me. We didn't say much. We didn't have to. Some stories don't need words anymore. They live in silence, in shared looks, in the simple act of being there. He finally said, "You know, Mom, I still remember what I called you that night. I still hate myself for it." I shook my head. "Don't carry that anymore, son. That weight belongs to yesterday. We're building tomorrow." He nodded slowly, and for a moment I saw tears glisten in his eyes. Not of regret, but of release. The little boy tugged his father's sleeve. "Daddy, is this the house you built?" My son smiled at me before answering. "No, baby. This is the house that built me." I felt my throat tighten. That was the moment I knew. Everything had come full circle. Every bruise, every night I cried alone, every sacrifice I made, it all led here, to love that learned how to grow again. As the sun began to set, the sky turned that deep honey color I've always loved. I closed my eyes and let the warmth touch my face. For the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't angry or afraid or waiting for something better. I was home. People always say strength comes from never breaking, but that's not true. Strength comes from breaking and learning how to rebuild with softer hands. So when people ask me what my life taught me, I tell them this: don't measure your worth by what they see in you. Measure it by what still blooms inside you when the world goes quiet. Because even after everything, betrayal, pain, loneliness, love is still the only thing that knows how to come back. And that's the truth. That's my story. The story of a woman who lost everything, just to learn that sometimes losing everything is how you find yourself again. The end.